Hello to Dr. Robertson's students. My name is Earl Martin. I'm the principal at Gardner Elementary School, where Dr. Robinson works, and Robertson, excuse me. And I really do want to give my sincerest apologies for missing your class the other night. That I wish I had a great excuse. Unfortunately, I don't. I attribute it to my absent-mindedness and the fact that when I do go home, I am coming home to 5 children and their various needs. And even though I had it in my calendar and I planned to attend, it somehow slipped my mind. And I did not use my toolbox for dealing with my absent-minded nature, which is to set a timer. So again, my apologies. I know this video probably doesn't suffice in terms of an actual in-person conversation where I could answer additional follow-up questions, but I'll do my best to share my perspective on the questions you asked. And so I'm just going to get started. The first question was dealing with my leadership style and how you've adjusted my leadership style to support your staff. That's a great question. During my time as an administrator, I've definitely have adapted and adjusted my leadership style. I would say when I came in with a very much a servant leadership style / democratic leadership style. I was very focused on working hard and modeling for staff that I'm willing to support them in whatever way I can. And I also very much valued building consensus before making decisions. Not that there are elements of those leadership styles that aren't beneficial. I still do some of that in certain capacities, but as I've grown into the role, I've adjusted a little bit. I've realized that building consensus is not always achievable or beneficial. And I've also learned that the importance of, as a leader, you really can't be in the mix all the time. Again, not that I don't want to solicit input from folks, I very much do. And not that I'm opposed to aspects of the servant leadership style, which again, I still incorporate. But my definition of leadership in general that I use quite often is, and it's based on a definition I learned at Boston College, but also something I've kind of adapted it a little bit. So the definition that I operate with is that leadership is motivating and mobilizing people to solve complex problems. And in my opinion, there's no more complex problem in our society, and frankly, no more important problem that deserves our attention, which is closing the gap between in terms of achievement between our students with disabilities and our general education students. And the gap at our school is pretty stark, and the problem also of creating an inclusive school environment that helps all students grow and learn and achieve. And that is our goal. We want to have an inclusive school environment, but it sometimes is a complex goal that requires some real complex solutions to help achieve that goal. And so I always, anytime I'm faced with a struggle or a challenge, and it is what, in some of my leadership training, a book called Leadership on the Line, I very much incorporate. It is those problems I just outlined are adaptive challenges, which are very complex. There's not one easy solution. And so, sometimes the temptation for leaders is to fix it with technical solutions. And those sometimes can spur some adaptive change, but adaptive change, I think, ties very well into that definition of leadership, which is motivating and mobilizing people to solve complex problems. So, and I'm certainly not perfect in that regard. I make mistakes every day in terms of best applying that definition to solve adaptive challenges and complex problems, but that's kind of my operating philosophy. And so now I always I do think one of the best ways to help solve adaptive problems is to solicit input, because I do feel that motivates and does help to mobilize staff towards the solutions you want. But I've learned that I can't hold a vote and make decisions that way. I have to solicit input, but then make decisions as to what I feel is going to be best for the students at our school. And I also very much, it's again, the servant leadership. You want to inspire and motivate by showing staff that you're willing to get into the mix and help them with whatever they need for support. But I've also learned that I need to be a little more of a CEO at points. So, we have 1,100 students at our school. For me to be an effective leader and to effectively mobilize and motivate folks, I can't always get into the mix of every situation. So those are just some of my leadership evolution that I've undergone. But the next question is how do you view the role of the BCBA in the school? I view the BCBAs as an integral parts of that, solving those complex problems of creating an effective, inclusive school environment and a successful, inclusive school environment, and closing some of the achievement gaps with our students with disabilities. And I very much. Our whole school philosophy is based on the multi-tiered systems of support, which very much focuses on data to proactively help students and solve some of these problems. And so the BCBA is an integral part of that MTSS, particularly our MTSS Tier 3 system. And they're an integral part of our mental health team, and they're integral parts of our behavior team. So, I don't know if that's a great definition, but that using data to proactively help us solve problems is very much something that I value. Their expertise on behavior and behavior application is very much leaned on at our school. It's just a very important element and contributor that FINA and our other BCBA are involved in. And this ties in a little bit into the ideal job description for a BCBA. I'm actually not sure I'm the best person to provide that. But it does tie into them creating plans that are going to help students be successful in a proactive way, and an inclusive way. So we do our best to lean on these plans so that we can achieve that inclusive environment. And this actually also filters into the next question, which is examples of BCBA collaboration, improved staff capacity, or student outcomes. Tons of examples over the years of the BCBAs and some of their plans helping students succeed. And I know they very much help students succeed in some of our sub-separate rooms, but I think very much an underrated but extremely valued component that they provide is some of the suggestions, behavior support plans, and other ideas that they contribute to some of our general education students and their success in the classroom. And this ties into our staff capacity. I don't know if Dr. Robertson has told you, our school probably 10 years ago had a goal of, in addition to being as inclusive as possible, to send fewer students out of district. And so we knew to do that, we had to create programs here at the school that were as good, if not better, than some of our out-of-district programs, or programs that we were sending students out to. Because as some of you may know, sending a student out of district, I think in a day program, averages around $110,000 a year. And I think overnight programs are upwards of $300,000 a year. So we sought to keep students at our school and in district because they have a better chance of having that inclusive environment opportunities. And the research just talks so much about the greater success these students have with that. And so we very, very much value the plans some of our BCBAs create to help students find success in the classroom, because if those plans are in the general education classroom and the sub-separate classroom, but it creates a lot of staff capacity. 110,000, we could use that money to pay one or two even staff members that could further aid students to achieve success in our inclusive school. And I've seen tons of examples of success in that regard. And also when students are able to have success in the general education setting through these plans that in a lot of school districts would have automatically placed them into a sub-separate program, it really is not only beneficial for the student because they're getting a great inclusive environment that they're totally capable of, but it also prevents our sub-separate systems from being overwhelmed and serving better the students who really truly need that setting for their success. So we don't overqualify for students to go into those sub-separate classrooms, which I think is a great thing for a lot of students, but it's also a good thing for our staff and student capacity. This, though, wow, I feel like all these questions bleed into each other. Maybe this was planned, I don't know. What challenges arise in the balancing the instructional priorities with the behavioral needs? A lot of challenges arise in this because, well, frankly, not everyone believes that some of our students that are particularly struggling behaviorally in our general education setting, deserve to be there. And in fairness to them, I don't think it's born out of a desire to not be inclusive. I don't think it's born out of a desire to not help students or see them succeed. It's born out of, in my opinion, the incredibly challenging work that our teachers do in managing classes, in teaching the Tier 1 and Tier 2 curriculums, in doing all those things to, and while also having students who with high needs who might need a lot of additional support. And so explaining our why as often as we can, this is why we believe this is successful. Validating staff frustrations and or questions and feelings around the challenges of having that inclusive student environment is something that I try to do with the staff when they're presented with BSPs that can be challenging to implement. And so some of those are some of the challenges. And I will tell you as a principal, and I have this conversation with many parents, a lot of parents struggle with understanding and or believing in a general education classroom where there are students with significant needs. And so, because there are times when those students do disrupt the learning environment. There are times when there is physical aggression towards another student, which obviously impacts instructional goals, instructional time. And frankly, other students, sometimes struggle with it too. And so it's really, really important to solicit that input, to validate those feelings, to incorporate them into maybe adjustments to the BSP. And I will say as a principal, I'm constantly making calls with those parents who are upset that either their child was hit or there was instructional time loss. And, I'm very quick to again validate those family feelings and explain to them it's one of the toughest parts of my job is balancing the education for all while also ensuring that our students with their highest needs also receive the best education for them. And balancing that is not easy. It's not there's no script for it. And so I very much lean on the BCBAs to help with those plans, to make adjustments to those plans, to have the flexibility around staff input around those plans. And so, understanding I think for you folks, understanding the challenges that educators are dealing with. If you've never taught a classroom, it's having that level of compassion and understanding for just how challenging it is to meet the goals of 25 students in front of them of various abilities and various needs. It's a really challenging task for a lot of our teachers, particularly at the elementary school. You're teaching 6 different subjects. You're differentiating in many of those subjects. You might have multiple behavior support plans in a class. So I think if I would have advice, it would be to understand that challenge and to have a level of compassion and empathy for those staff members who might have pushback when a BSP is presented to them that does seem a bit overwhelming. Which I think was another question here in terms of the BSPs. Yeah, so again, I think validating how they're feeling, but also explaining the why. This BSP is here, explaining, and that's partially my job too, is to explain why we value an inclusive general education setting, and even our sub-separate classrooms with sub-separate students. We're constantly finding ways to push them back into the classroom in the general education setting. So that would be my best response to the concern around BSPs. Sorry, my lights went out. In terms of the ABA practices, yes, I have heard pushback from that. I've heard some folks reference them as dog training. I've heard some folks reference it as superficial and not getting it at the root cause. FINA will tell you that occasionally the counselors will butt heads with the ABA staff or the BCBAs around the best way to approach students who have really complex needs that require therapy, but also require some behavioral modification techniques. And kind of my response to that, and I actually give FINA tons of credit because she is very much believes in this, and I appreciate it. I don't think it's an either or. It's very much an and also. I think ABA methodology, as well as various counseling or related service provider techniques, can complement each other and can both help to meet the student needs. So that's kind of my view on that. And then it looks like, what advice do you have for BCBAs or people who wanting to be BCBAs in schools? My biggest advice is to give it some serious consideration. It's incredibly, as hard as it is, as complex as the job you would be facing as a BCBA in a school can be. It is such a purpose-filled, I believe, endeavor and profession. Working in the schools, particularly all grades, but I have worked in all different grade levels, and one of the things I really value about the elementary school is you have a chance to really make a difference with kids at the ground floor that can really change not just their academic trajectory, but their life trajectory. And so to be a part of that, to be a part of a setting that does help put kids on that great path is incredibly rewarding. I know there's lots of other settings that BCBAs can work in, and certainly there's value in those settings as well, but there is something that's very life-giving about working at a school where you have such variety, but it's also you do get filled with the sense of hope and purpose in this setting anyway. I've not worked in any of the private settings or anything like that, so I'm sure there's a lot of that there as well, but that's my feeling about working in schools. You do feel, I tell people, what other job can I make a difference with 1,100 kids every single day? So that's kind of how I feel about working in the school system. For you, and the last question for you, what is the biggest barrier to effective collaboration? Have any solutions to that barrier been developed? If so, have those solutions proven to be effective and sustainable to future use? The biggest, I feel, barrier to effective collaboration is a lot of times folks are try to prove why their contribution is the right contribution, and jumping to judgment. I know Fina mentioned in my little bio there that I very much value the curiosity over judgment. That is one of the biggest barriers to effective collaboration, is not just being curious about what others have to contribute, and listen, really being focused on listening to understand, not listening to respond. Again, that ties into that, oh, I want to be right in this conversation, and I want my perspectives to be at the forefront. That to me tends to be a barrier that's difficult to overcome. And so just talking about that need to hear all perspectives, that talk, enforcing the collaboration norms, whatever those are, in terms of assuming positive intentions, whether that's valuing other perspectives. And I feel like we do at our school do a good job of fostering that collaborative environment, and really emphasizing that's our value. We're not rushing to judgment. We're not shooting down ideas first and ask questions later. We're very much acknowledging that everyone has contributions. So again, my sincerest apologies for missing the meeting. I know this is well, maybe it's better. Maybe it's better than me being there, because then I'll go off on some tangent that I wasn't intending. So now you have a nice 22-minute concise principles perspectives on BCBAs, the profession. You're in super great hands with Dr. Robertson. She's been doing it a long time, but at lots of different settings, but she's a really valuable contributor to our school, and the fact that she's able to teach you guys while still being in our school. She's now actually supervising other BCBAs in the district. Super lucky to have her expertise and her input. And certainly if there are follow-up questions, I'm happy to help out. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your semester, and great luck in your future pursuits. And if you ever want to come to our school, or you want to reach out individually for a question or some insight, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Bye now.